Hello.
Hi, everybody. Friday night.
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Of course. Well, why am I just saying about this? It's Friday the 13th. We're so glad you're here joining us for our last quarterly training of the year with Spring Freedom.
If you can imagine.
I know, right?
Yeah.
This is actually the fourth one. And we are excited to bring you the Creating Confidence Challenge. A little funny story about that is we had like this brainstorm session like 6 months ago about our upcoming training events. And we were kind of chit-chatting and we knew what kind of a vision for this event would be, but we didn't write any of it down. We just had a name.
Just in our brains.
So when we started to plan for this weekend, she was like, what were we gonna do again? And I'm like, all I have is creating confidence, and I knew I had something to do with creativity. So So we're gonna focus, and we have special speakers that are gonna speak on how you can use creativity, your own creativity, because everybody has a different kind of brain. Using your own creativity to fight human trafficking in your own life, in your own community, and around the world.
Yep. And believe it or not, it is more important than ever that we are able to use the unique ways that we're made and to show up in the world in those ways while we are eliminating trafficking, making the world safe for people, utilizing access to fair trade things. There are way more fair trade options now than ever before. And those that are the thrift queens and kings know how important it is to, reuse anything you can, repurpose garments, things like that. But yeah, it's actually something that's taken off quite a bit here in the last 5-10 years, to be a lot more mainstream, I feel.
Yes.
So
a lot more normal.
Yeah.
Acceptable.
Yeah. So there's actually a YouTube channel that I've watched for years and years and years, and I really like them. But one of the things that they've said for their channel is that they're very into thrifting. So they go to the thrift store and they repurpose a lot of their clothing from thrift store finds, and the same with furniture, even craft and design things. They start with items from the thrift store, and they said we've had a lot of people that we've caught flack from because we choose to purpose those things. And I think 3 or 4 years ago they went solely only things that they could thrift for their homes, redoing things, but also for their wardrobes. So
I remember this is a long time ago, 20 years ago. My sister, who is more on the liberal side than I am, she comes to my husband and I, and she's like, I think you guys should become freegans. Now, I had not heard the term freegan, but when I looked it up, I'm like, we're already doing this. So now, we were never the dumpster diver kind. We never visited the dumpsters of supermarkets or anything, but our first couch did come from an alley. True confessions.
I'm not going to lie. I definitely picked up a piece of furniture that was out at the curb, and I was like, I'm going to use that. So it's actually really hard for me to walk into a store and be like, oh, yes, I want whatever's on display, because I find that my style doesn't tend to be reflected in mainstream home decor and some of the other, I like some minimal things, but I do like some very eclectic things, and I have a sentimental streak of places I've been or lived or whatever. You can't find that at a store either.
No, and it's really interesting how that really intersects with fighting human trafficking.
Yeah.
Now I have times where maybe I have a book of matches, and it's probably a free book of matches that I got from somewhere, and then the match doesn't work, or it like comes apart, and I'm like, dang it! But then I'm like, well, I guess probably that child or non-paid employee in China lost focus that day. When you start putting your mind in the mind of those who make these things and their daily lives and the actual struggles, it shifts your perspective, and really, I feel like Americans, and especially mainstream Americans, have come a long way in the last 10 years, especially. And one of the things is there's a lot more missional businesses, and these are, a lot of them are fair trade. And the purpose is to effect change in the communities where the items are made. And it's just exciting to see these missional businesses like take off and really gain traction, and not just monetarily, but also in the culture, because you see founders show up in Forbes magazine or on the bestseller list on Amazon, and it's so exciting. It's so exciting, especially when you know some of these people.
Yeah.
You really are investing in their success, but their success is really investing in communities in Guatemala or Mexico or Asia or Jordan or Africa, a couple countries in Africa. So it's exciting times, and we love bringing these stories to you, and I'm really excited about our speakers we have lined up for tonight. Is there anything else we want to share about this weekend? We're just doing 2 days this time, scheduling stuff, but we have tonight, and we're so glad for anybody who's here. We are so thankful for you. But if you're watching this on the replay, that is cool. We're going to keep the replay up for a few days after the event. So if you are watching this, go and share with your friends and family. And our next session 2, is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock Eastern. And session 3 will be Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So that leaves you your Saturday night to have fun, go to a fall fest, or just chill, because I know a lot of people have sports stuff with their kids on Saturdays. So relax. If you are at sports stuff with your kids, catch up on the training.
Yes.
I am gonna post this. Zona, you wanna?
So if you guys don't know, we are really excited because we just had our 1-year anniversary from when we started our podcast, which is Persons with Lived Experience. And can you believe we did 5 seasons in 1 year?
Not really.
Yeah.
Actually, we're kind of in the middle of season 5, but
it's true.
It was a little bit crazy there for a while.
It has been crazy. But you know how it is where you're building something and you're like, is anybody even going to show up? And then all of a sudden, you're into your 5th season and you're like, I guess people showed up. I guess they're actually listening. So that's very exciting for me. So that feels like a huge win. It's been a very vulnerable thing to share those stories. And now we're seeing, like we were able to have the first person to have their record expunged here in the state of Florida. And they have set precedent now that there are other states that are talking about that very same law for people that have been forced into crimes because of their traffickers, and even have done jail time. So that's pretty crazy if you think about it.
It really is.
And then since then, we've had several people that have gone on to write books that have been on the podcast. We've had people that have started their own nonprofits. One of the girls that was on actually started a family. Yeah.
So sweet.
So
lots to celebrate.
It is. It is very exciting when you start thinking about, you know, these are not just people that had this experience. You know, they've gone on to help write laws. They've gone on to work internationally. They are really truly becoming the voices of anti-trafficking here in the United States and around the world. And we got to have them on our show.
So awesome.
Yeah. So
we're gonna have to share more, I think.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think
we all set. Okay.
Yeah.
So our first speaker tonight, and the first speaker of the first annual Creating Confidence Challenge, is Erin Woods.
Mm-hmm.
She is a mom, wife, friend, and advocate. She lives in Longwood, Florida, with her husband Justin and their 2 sons, which are amazing. Erin has spent the past decade fighting human trafficking and global poverty through her ethical fashion business with Trades of Hope. She is also has a personal styling business that helps women become unstoppable forces for good in their own lives through confident personal style. She also loves to sing and work out, travel, read, and attend theater. I personally know that she also is a very good actress and experienced in theater in her own life.
Wow.
And she's an arts girl at heart and currently sings at her church. And she works as a volunteer theater director for her children's school. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Erin. We are going to transition to your beautiful face.
Hello.
Hi, Erin.
I can't hear you.
We can't hear you yet.
You gotta love technology. It is Friday the 13th,
we'll get there,
you know. So sometimes you have to give permission to the app for sound.
We'll get there.
And you know how that goes. All these different technologies they have now for streaming video, and each one of them have a different process to connect your microphone, to connect your camera and things like that. So I always figure
you might check in settings.
Mm-hmm.
I had that issue once. I was like, what's happening?
It's true. It's true. All right. I'm still not hearing you.
Oh, she's got to rejoin, I think. Well, we'll get there.
Yeah, and that's totally fine.
Yes. I'll share a little bit more. Now, Erin will probably share this, but she has been a part of Trades of Hope for 10 years, and she's actually one of the national executive directors, which is a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, she just started as kind of like a part-time gig to get her out of the house, out of mom life. Okay, I'm still not hearing her.
I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Oh, man.
All right. So let's see. In your settings at the bottom, can you hit audio and just confirm that your microphone is working? There should be a test option because sometimes it'll flip me to something weird if I've had headphones on.
Yeah. I do have a
now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
Was it still connected to headphones?
It was connected to a different camera. So I don't know. But
all right.
Welcome.
We're good.
We're glad you're here, and we're glad it's working.
Yes.
Us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I am gosh, Dixie, how long have we known each other? Like
almost 7 years.
7 years? Okay.
Almost 7 because
so you've been a part of like Trades of Hope almost as long as I have, and kind of this human trafficking advocacy work. But it's funny because even after 10 years of technically doing work that is fighting human trafficking, when you asked me to speak, I was like, but I'm not qualified. And so as I was kind of crafting my thoughts for tonight, I was like, okay, so that's the problem, right? It's, so many, I've considered myself a very like average, everyday kind of human. And even though I have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, more than the average person, I still sometimes or often don't feel confident to speak up about human trafficking. I feel imposter syndrome, or I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing or use the wrong term or offend somebody or get inadvertently political or like all of those things. And I would imagine that's something, I mean, that's probably why your followers and your listeners and your people are here, because it's like, I am certain that I'm not okay with the injustices and the darkness that exists in the world. So like, I've got to figure out how to do something, even when I don't feel confident, right? So there's like this insidiousness in the world that I'm not okay with. And so it can either consume me or fuel me. And so I guess I've chosen to be fueled. So I have to get creative in order to find my confidence. So speaking to your topic, I think is so, as I started to write this and think about this, I was like, yeah, like it really is about digging into the things that inspire us and make us kind of tick as humans, and then connecting them with the injustices that we want to speak about in a confident way.
All right. We're going to switch over. So you will completely have the
okay. All right.
And I know that you are going to be good. We'll join you afterwards.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Oh, this one. Yes. No. Sorry. I'm going to let
That's
her
all right.
All right. So thank you guys. So one of the first times I ever met Dixie, actually, and I think she reminded me of this the other night when I called her about this talk, and I was like, I just want to make sure that I'm on the right track. And she's like, I remember the first time I met you, which was like 7 years ago. And she said, I said, I don't really know how to be an advocate. And she said, but you already are, right? And I think that's the point of this whole challenge and this whole conversation, that we are here learning and stepping into a space that is full of vast complexities. But at the core, we know as individuals that we're just not okay with the fact that trafficking exists, that it is thriving essentially in our modern world. And so we're committing to using our unique talents and giftings and honestly the daydreams and passions of our daily lives to be confident advocates within our communities, and to trust that we can't say the wrong thing if we're speaking from that place of genuine willingness to learn and grow. So if you're here, that obviously means that you are willing to do that soul searching and to figure out like what your thing is and how you can use it with your voice, with confidence, to continue advocating and fighting for justice in the world. I remember, this is just a little analogy for you. A doctor didn't start out doing surgery. She was clumsily listening for your pulse on your forehead with a plastic stethoscope, right? So like, if that's you, that's okay. Like everybody has to start somewhere. And so wherever you are in this process, like it's okay. We're not doctors. I'm going to talk about 3 main things tonight in our time together. Number 1 is understanding the human trafficking and social justice issues with confidence as a learner and not necessarily an expert. And number 2, discerning and determining your own skills and creative passions and what really lights you up and what is your calling, and maybe being surprised how that can match up with fighting human trafficking and being an advocate. And then finally, turning those skills and passions towards creative advocacy, feeling confident that your contribution in whatever way fits with you and your heart and the way that you were created, and it can be enough and can actually make a difference. So the first thing I want to talk about is understanding human trafficking and social injustice or social issues with confidence as a learner, not an expert. So I think that's like problem number 1 is we think, okay, if I'm going to say something about human trafficking, I'd better know what I'm talking about, or I shouldn't say anything at all. And to me, that all or nothing is problematic. Like that leaves room for conversation, for learning, for growth, for being wrong or being corrected or being, shifted in a different direction. So I want to go back for a minute because I have not always known what human trafficking was. And I'm going to take you back actually 2 decades to begin with. So way back, 20 years ago. This is before kids, before I became a stay-at-home mom, before I started working with Trades of Hope, into my first decade-long career, which was as a high school English and theater teacher. So I've always had a passion for making a difference. That was always part of my fiber. I wanted to make a contribution to the world that rippled beyond the present moment. And during that season, that time of my life, that decade, I was putting on theatrical productions. I was running a high school theater program, which is a pretty legit kind of theater program to run. I was teaching outside of the box Shakespeare elective courses. I was developing an improv curriculum, and I was literally exploding with passion for the subjects that I was teaching, for my students, and for all the fires that I could light in them through stories, literature, storytelling, and human connection. Like, that was my work as a teacher. And none of it in my mind at the time was really specifically about social justice or human trafficking, because I didn't even really know what those things were. But I was advocating. I was advocating for the voices of my students, for the voices of the unheard. I was looking out for kids that were on the fringe and inviting them into my theater program. I was looking for kids that didn't seem to have a place. I was watching out for girls who were making poor choices with boys and boys that were making poor choices with girls. I was looking out for kids whose parents didn't seem to be looking out for them. I was just keeping an eye out for the kids that could get lost in the shuffle. And all of these things that I was doing in that decade of my life were setting a stage for what would come later. And when I look back, there was something else about that time in my life, which is going to sound like it's out of left field, but it'll all make sense, I promise. I also really loved being voted the most stylish teacher, and I worked really hard to wear something fun and creative and cute every single day. I was not an outfit repeating teacher. It was bad for ethical fashion, good for getting voted most stylish faculty member. But little did I know how that love for fashion would later become a huge part of my advocacy work. It's just really kind of wild. I mean, even as I was putting this together and starting to connect the dots, I was like, whoa. But more about that in a minute. So then flash forward just a little bit. I was a teacher for 10 years. And then when my second son was born, I decided to take a leave of absence from my teaching career. That was actually at year 11. And it was only supposed to be for a year. I was going to dabble in being a stay-at-home mom. I never thought that it would be permanent. Spoiler alert, it became permanent. But after a year away from the classroom, I honestly didn't really look back. God clearly had a new chapter for me. And I thought that new chapter was going to be play dates, preschool, soccer mom, those kinds of things. And while it was those things, this chapter was also a new subject matter for me to learn and a new way to create ripples of impact. So I was no longer teaching, but I had this new life, and God had something big in store for me. So during that year, about 8 months into that first year away from the classroom, I saw a graphic on Facebook with a cute pair of earrings and the tagline, "Empowering Women Out of Poverty." And I was really intrigued by the company, Trades of Hope. And so I reached out to my friend who had posted the graphic, and I said, I want to know more. I want those earrings, and I want to know how they are empowering women out of poverty. I hosted a party, and I fell in love with the products, and I really latched on to the mission of empowering women out of poverty through the creation of fair trade, sustainable jobs. This was something completely new to me. 10 years ago, fair trade was still very much just like chocolate and coffee and 10,000 villages. And I didn't even really completely grasp what it was all about. I had never been on a mission trip or done work like that, but the idea of creating opportunities for women around the globe as a stay-at-home mom felt kind of miraculous. It felt like something like my teaching job, right? It felt like it was creating a ripple that was bigger than me. It was connecting beyond the present moment. And as I learned more and I found more connection points, I started to really understand job creation and that I could understand a desperate mother. I could understand wanting and needing work to support a family. I could grasp the principles of fair trade and that those in the developing world needed those protective business practices because of vulnerabilities to exploitation. I also knew that Trades of Hope and job creation and fair trade principles were doing something related to human trafficking, but I wasn't really completely sure how to connect those dots back then. And that was a decade ago. And I still didn't really understand what human trafficking was. And even then, 10 years ago, I don't think the world really understood what human trafficking was to the degree that we do now, thank goodness. But we're all still learning. But the good thing and the beautiful thing was that I was open to learning, and I was positioning myself as a learner and not an expert. As I learned things, I shared them with my customers, with my online followers, with friends. And they were really simple aha light bulb moments or a statistic that I would hear. But as my understanding unfolded, I shared it. And there were things that I had to unlearn as well at that time. I had to unlearn mindsets about charity as a long-term solution to basically any problem. I had to learn how job creation and economic development could truly break generational cycles of poverty. And I had to unlearn about fast fashion and that not repeating your outfit every day for a whole school year is not really very good for people and the economy and the environment. But it's not a very responsible way to shop. And I had to learn ways to slow down my fashion, like renting or swapping or thrifting, shopping my own closet, curating capsules, creating outfit formulas, and so much more. But as I slowly learned and unlearned these different things, I found that the effect on me was my confidence was growing in my ability to advocate, in my ability to share, and my ability to talk about these things that I was learning about. So don't be afraid to position yourself as a learner. If you're at the very, very beginning of your journey of learning about combating human trafficking and how it's going to fit into your life, or if you're more like Dixie and you've been fighting it for decades, wherever you are, you're still learning, right? And people love to learn with you. So don't be afraid to position yourself in that way. So second point, I needed to figure out at a certain point how to hone my own passions and callings and how they were going to be used to really advocate for the social justice issues that I was learning about. So I had the vehicle. I had a fair trade business. I was learning and sharing. I just needed to find me in it all and to make it something really personal, fully genuine and authentic. And honestly, by finding myself and my true passion and calling in it, it kept it fresh. It's kept it fresh for over a decade. It's exciting and it's constantly challenging me. And what I discovered is that the way I creatively advocate is through style and confidence. My whole life, I've been a little bit obsessed with clothes and style and fashion, not because I was great at it, but actually because I struggled with it. I had tons of body dysmorphia issues and all kinds of issues growing up since about age 9. Worked through most of those, but I daydreamed about clothes and outfits. I grew up watching Stacey and Clinton on TLC's What Not to Wear, and I have seen every episode many, many, many times over. And when I started to work with Trades of Hope 10 years ago, I was thrilled at the idea of combining my love, pseudo obsession with fashion with advocacy. And in the past 10 years, working with Trades of Hope, learning about fair trade fashion and ethical fashion, learning about how the connection point to reducing the vulnerabilities of women protects them from human trafficking, prevents human trafficking, all of those things combined, leaning also into my love of style and fashion and shopping and making outfits, it has led to this like full realization of how I creatively advocate for human trafficking. And it's my Instagram bio says what I'm doing there is sharing ethical fashion and style tips so that we can be an unstoppable force of good together. And that's really what it's all kind of boiled down to. And it took me a while to get to this point. It's been a decade, so it didn't happen overnight. I was using, even at the beginning, other people's words, other people's ideas. I wasn't as confident in my own ability to lean into what was really a calling on my heart and how to make style and fashion really make sense in terms of advocacy. But I kept working on it. It was a process of learning, unlearning, honing, experimenting. But at the root of it all, it was about getting dressed and showing up for the contribution I wanted to make in the world. And it's what I did as a teacher. I mean, it was why I was voted most stylish faculty member every single year. It was because I was showing up as the most confident version of myself every day to school. And in turn, I was changing lives every day in my classroom because my creativity was freely flowing and engaged. One of my favorite books on the subject of figuring out your purpose is Bob Goff's Dream Big. And if you haven't read it, just like immediately read it, like tonight. Get on Amazon, order it, or go find it and get it on Audible and start listening. Actually, it's amazing on Audible because he's such a great storyteller. But it was life-changing for me. And it was really like a tipping point because I read it probably 4 years ago. It helped me realize and really connect the dots that, you think about daydreams, and especially daydreams about clothes, and you're like, that feels like kind of a silly thing that I was daydreaming about almost obsessively. But after reading the book, I understood that those daydreams, those silly ideas that kept popping into my mind when I was the most relaxed, when I was really trying to, when I would go out and for long walks, I would think about these things. And they were the callings on my heart. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, how are outfits the callings on my heart? But there's a connection between our daydreams and our callings, and they are really the same thing. And I missed it for a long time, and I kept them separated. But when I started to merge the two and really open myself up, that was when I felt the most joy, the most satisfaction, and the most confidence in my advocacy work, and honestly in my life. I started to reach different people because my message was loud and clear. Stylish, confident women can be unstoppable forces for good. Like that, I figured it out. Like whatever you want to do in the world, it's easier to do it if you feel confident. Bob says that the biggest ambitions start with the smallest whisper. Well, my daydreams felt pretty loud and clear, and yours might be too. Or maybe they're just like the little whispers, but listen to them. I didn't think that fashion, style, and clothing could be the calling on my heart, and I certainly didn't think that it would have anything to do with changing the world. But that's the thing about God, right? He doesn't create us for the things we are expecting or wanting. He creates us to do the things he wants. And we certainly aren't expected to understand. So you have to be open. You have to be ready to receive. You have to listen closely because it might be a whisper. And then you have to start connecting the dots and trusting that those are the things that are supposed to be connected. So you're super passionate about fighting human trafficking, and maybe you have this other creative thing that you just love doing and lights you up. Put them together and you will be advocating in a creative, powerful way. What I know to be true after 10 years of working in ethical fashion and personal style and leadership is that we are all advocates by simply continuing to fight for vulnerabilities. We are looking for the weak spots where people are preyed upon, whether it's shopping fair trade jobs so that jobs can be sustained and women don't have to make desperate choices for their families, buying more responsibly, consuming less, to take a stand against slave labor in the fashion industry, showing up to the hard conversations with our children about predators and online safety, and then friendships and relationships built on trust, and just looking out for our community. So finally, when you start to turn your skills and passions towards creative advocacy, that feeling of contribution, that feeling of confident contribution, and that you should know that you can be enough and that you can make a difference and that you can be an unstoppable force for good, just using the things that you love to do, period. That's enough. Some other little bits of wisdom I've learned along the way. It's really important to me to get dressed every day. And I say that to as much as I can to everyone who listen. So get dressed every day. That's part of your advocacy, because you can't get out and do your thing if you don't feel good in what you're wearing. So I always tell my style clients, like, start with really basic things. Understand your body shape, understand your style, personality, the colors that are best on you. Find some YouTubers that you enjoy, like style YouTubers, and put them on while you're making breakfast, and start to put some of those tips into action. Develop a basic uniform for yourself. But getting dressed, putting on your outfit each day allows you to step into that creative advocacy work that you really want to be doing. Allow yourself to evolve. The next version of you is the one who can do the thing that your current self can't. And I think that's really cool. I think about myself 20 years ago as a teacher who loved my job and thought maybe there was nothing else out there for me, didn't have any kids, didn't know what the future held. And there was so much more. And that girl couldn't do what I'm doing right now. So the next version of you is the one who can do the thing that your current self can't. So what's next? I keep thinking about, what's next? And if you keep settling or living fearfully in your safe cocoon, you'll never experience that person. I never thought I'd be a teacher. I always told everyone I was majoring in English because I was going to be an attorney. I wasn't going to be a teacher. But then I loved teaching. I loved it so much, and I was really good at it. Then I told myself I would never be a stay-at-home mom because it wasn't for me. And then I loved being a stay-at-home mom, and I have loved it every day. Well, there's been some hard days, but I'm so grateful that this is my life. I also said I'd never join a direct sales company, and then I did, and it changed my life again. And thank goodness my path was taken over by a higher power, and I stopped trying to make my own decisions because I never would have experienced the beautiful life that I've had so far, or been able to channel my passions in such interesting and unexpected ways. Here's a big one, because as you start to speak up about things that you care about, you hear all the little doubts and fears in your head. But here's one. Remember, you can never annoy or offend the right person. If you speak from your heart without fear, if you can position yourself as a learner, or even if you're an expert and you just share what lights you up, something exciting that you learned, a great tip, a great statistic, a great moment, a beautiful story, the people who are ready to receive it will receive it, and the rest are fine. They don't matter. You can't annoy or offend the right people, the people that are longing to hear what you have to say. Here's a fun one too. Nobody ever died from a bruised ego. Again, it's going to take some courage to speak and share and do the things that you want to do, especially if you're doing something that feels a little bit like, does this make sense? Are people going to get me? I feel like this is strange. But even if someone disagrees with you, thinks you're silly, or what you've created is cringy, you'll live to see another day. Nobody's died from a bruised ego. It's fine. But seriously, you have to be okay with taking some risks in pursuit of your passions. And I promise it's worth it. And then, of course, you know this one. People think about you way less than you think they do. And that's a relief. I always think about my sons when I get nervous about speaking up or saying something. They're in that fishbowl imaginary audience stage of middle school. And I'm super glad I'm not in middle school anymore. And it also breaks my heart to think that they would hold back their creativity or their passions because they're afraid of what somebody might think. So look silly in the name of your passions. Do it for your kids. Do it for all children who need bravery and love to permeate the world. And just remember that your creativity and talents are powerful tools for making a difference. You were created for someone to hear what you have to say in the way that you were created to say it. Only you. So stay passionate, stay informed and persistent in your advocacy efforts. Bob Goff says, I'd rather fail trying than fail watching. So stay in the mix, stay a learner, keep getting dressed and showing up, and keep fighting for that creative advocacy that I know you can discover. So thank you, Dixie. Thank you guys for having me tonight. That's my message.
Here we go. Sorry, I thought I hit it and then it didn't hit. So thank you so much, Erin. That was amazing, as always. What I love about Erin teaching is it always feels like she's talking to you in person. And so you're always going to get something great.
It's true.
Thank you.
It's true. I tried to post that I really love that book by Bob Goff. And guys, if you have any questions or things, definitely go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll start our question and answer time. But there is a little bit of a delay. So we want to give people time to get their questions in.
Now's the time. Question and answers.
I think that was one of the things for me is that I had always dreamt about being a job creator. Like when people were like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'm like, I want to create affordable housing and I want to create jobs. So That's probably my big girl dreams.
That's awesome.
And I believe that, those are some of the main principles behind, limiting vulnerabilities here and abroad. And that's kind of one of the things that you found. And it's so cool how it ties together, with your unique identity and with the identity that, Bring Freedom has and all of those things, where people actually don't have to be somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's the whole point, is that you have to figure out what it is that you were created for, and it's going to be special and it's going to be unique. Like every single person has it. It's in there. And then figure out how to connect the dots with the things that are in front of you in your life. It's like, and the book, William was asking, the book that we were talking about is Dream Big by Bob Goff. And it is, and anything by Bob Goff is very, very inspiring and motivating for just being a good human, putting love into the world, making the world a better place. But that book in particular is like taking the whisperings in your heart, those little daydreams that maybe you've never even told anybody about, those creative pursuits, those little ideas or those big ideas that you've kept to yourself, putting them into action. And that's
yeah, I think that's powerful.
It is, and it really intersects well with what we're talking about this weekend. And yeah, I got to hear him speak at a youth pastor conference, and like everybody else was super excited that he was there, and I had no idea who.
I have that story too.
Wow.
No, I went to a MOPS conference. We had a table set up at Trades of Hope, and all these moms were like going nuts over this old guy. I'm like, who is this? Why are they like, these young moms are like, oh my God. And then I read his book, and then I figured out who he was. And like a couple years later, I saw him speak at a church. Yeah. And I was totally crying and totally like fangirling, and got my picture with him, and was trying to like choke out that like, you changed my life with your book. So I but my first time too, I was like, who is this guy?
That's awesome.
I do think that's fun when those times happen though, because you're like, I guess I was here to hear about this thing right now. And we do believe that, like, even for people that are watching this, whether you're watching it live, whether you're watching it on the stream, whether you're watching as part of our training program later, maybe you haven't heard before that you have a place, and that your calling is going to be unique to you, and that it's going to tie into the different identity pieces. And this might be their Bob Goff moment.
Never know.
That would be awesome. That would be great.
Yeah.
I know. It seems like we bring up Trades of Hope a lot. And part of it is just because I've connected with so many amazing women through Trades of Hope. But I've always said, it's amazing because it's a community of like-hearted women, mostly women. There are some men. But they come from all different backgrounds and all different ages. And some have missionary backgrounds. Some had dreams of being a missionary. Some used to be teachers or full-time business or even finances. But from all these different backgrounds, they come together with this purpose, this mission to effect change, and not just in our own communities, but around the world. And when I joined Trades of Hope almost 7 years ago, I was already in the anti-trafficking field, and our focus at that time was within America, because it felt like nobody was talking about it happening here. And but of course, I wasn't going to be the one kicking down doors or going and talking to women on the streets, and because it just wasn't practical, especially at the time with little kids. But I was working in the arena of in our community, in our backyard, as was a very familiar phrase used at the time, especially. But I was looking for a way to also impact the trafficking issues around the world. And I knew a big part of that was going to be prevention.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of prevention is job creation. So when a friend of mine, she got signed up with Trades of Hope and she emailed me right away. She's like, Dixie, this is perfect for you. You need to find out. And it took me probably about a year of her talking about it till I got signed up. But that was not just because of that, but other stuff going on in my life. So it's been amazing. And I'm so grateful for you joining us tonight and for all the work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you guys. There's one question. Do you want me to answer it?
Yeah.
So Christian Influencer Inspired is asking, how did I transition from a no repeat wardrobe to ethical fashion? Yeah, it didn't happen overnight. And I think the biggest thing about, again, like positioning yourself as a learner, right? So when you know better, you can do better, but shame never works, guilt never affects really long-term lasting change. You have to just take the things that you're learning and slowly start to shift and implement new strategies. So actually, one of the first things I did was hire a personal stylist to come. It was like my birthday present and it was 8 years ago. And it was because I had this massive sort of disposable teacher wardrobe. And now I was a stay-at-home mom. I needed so much less, and I didn't really have practical things for that life. So that was one of the best investments I've ever made, because I think so many women have so many clothes and nothing to wear. And she came in and just helped me kind of like clean out, discern why I couldn't make outfits, all my struggles. And then just start from a place of like, okay, super intentional buying, making sure that if I'm going to wear this, I can wear it in multiple ways. And then that has evolved into like things that I mentioned, like renting instead of always buying new, renting or borrowing or thrifting for events, especially. Like if I'm only going to wear a dress one time, I want to make sure that I'm renting that dress and that 500 other women get to wear that dress one time, like that dress has much more of a life beyond one time and hanging in my closet. So that's been, I've been renting for over 7 years for special events. And now for everyday life too, I use a renting service for like regular clothes. Just buying less, wearing more, wearing things over and over, buying, using things that, like this blouse I wear all the time. Dixie's seen it many times, but it's kind of my signature color. I like the way it looks on Zoom. So it's like, you don't always need new, shopping your own closet. Those are just a few of the things. I share a lot of that on my Instagram, which I think you guys are going to share. But yeah, I think the biggest thing with transitioning into doing better is just removing the guilt, removing the shame, and just next time you go to make a clothing purchase, look in your own closet first, or consider renting, thrifting, borrowing, swapping, things like that. And then just go from there, and only buy something if it fills you with lots and lots of joy.
Use that spark joy for new stuff.
Yes, 100%. It is a true
I love
story.
it.
Don't just buy it because it's on sale.
Definitely.
Right?
Sometimes there's a reason.
I've cleaned out a lot of closets with lots of tags still on items, and it's like,
what is also, I'll throw this in. If you do have closets full of stuff that still have tags, donate it to a community. I volunteer with a group called Echo Ministries Florida, and the clothing goes to kids in foster care. And so for them to be able to shop new items is such a confidence booster for them. And to have choices is also something for their own style, their own choices, and not just whatever they're given. So that is another way to pay it forward. And make some good options. And of course, when you have some basics that you love and look good on you, you can always mix it up with accessories, right?
Definitely.
So that's always fun.
Mhm. I think I, at one point, had gotten myself down to a completely capsule wardrobe. So everything I owned matched everything else I owned. And
That's
that
impressive.
was amazing.
That's amazing.
But it only lasts as long as those colors can still be found in things.
Yeah.
And then my life transitioned. Like now I work in a warehouse half the time, where we feed kids that are that their families need help on the weekends as well. And I would not want to wear those clothes in the warehouse. I'm like, I would always be destroying something. But I have found that there are a lot of things that, you don't even realize you can reuse or repurpose or it's
Yeah, I think a great exercise for if you're just at the beginning, like I have a garment rack where I kind of pull things for like seasons or different, or if I'm planning for a trip. But even if you don't, just clear out a spot in your closet, and either every time you can do the turning your hangers thing is one thing, where if you wear it, turn the hanger around. So you can kind of see what you're wearing, because most women only wear about 20% of what's hanging in their closet. Or pull out and kind of create a capsule in a separate place and just do your own. I love like those Instagram challenges where it's like, 30 piece or whatever, 20 pieces, 30 days of outfits or whatever. I think like, giving yourself your own little challenge like that, just to kind of see what you're actually wearing, and then kind of editing from there and taking things out, donating to Echo, like you said, swapping with friends. The other thing that has been incredibly helpful is having my colors done, which is such like an 80s thing, but it's having this revival. Like it's huge. And it's a huge way to not buy things that aren't right for you. Like once I had that done, and it gave me so much clarity, like I should not be wearing black or white or gray. And I have a ton of black and white and gray in my closet. And it was like, oh, there's a reason why I always felt like I had to put on extra makeup or do, it's like, I don't feel confident when I wear those colors. And now that I only wear, for the most part, colors in my season, I'm not buying anything that doesn't work for me, certainly. And I'm using things because like you were talking about mixing and matching within a season, everything goes with everything. If you're within the right color palette, and that makes it really fun as well, like color combinations you never would have thought of. So again, just being creative. It's all about creativity.
Yeah,
I love it. That's nice.
I do too.
That is true.
Well, I guess even men only wear 15 to 20% of their clothes. So yes, if they're in like new condition, donate them. With Echo, we specifically serve kids, so it's up through age 18. So if it's something that someone under 18 would wear, I actually recommend, especially for the men, I recommend donating it to a closet for like City Mission or a homeless ministry where they always need clothes, especially men's clothes. So that might be a good option for that. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know we were going to go off on clothes like this. This is pretty cool.
It's all connected.
Well, because we can't walk around naked, it is really important that.
What are some fair trade clothing brands that you recommend?
Yeah.
So it's really awesome. More and more big retailers in the last 10 years have really been challenged to up their game. And I love that. You can find ethical and sustainable clothing. And I'm not perfect by any stretch. I still buy from major retailers. But one of my newest favorites is, I have a couple of favorites. Nisolo is a fabulous shoe brand. Their shoes are just heavenly leather, and they last forever, and they just get better with time, and really great, just like classic basics, like for every season. and they're all, you get a card from the artisan who made them, and they're just beautiful. So Nisolo does really good responsible work. Cezanne is a little bit higher end clothing, but they're beautiful, and they are very, very clean, very ethical. I love Quince. That's more of an affordable brand, and it'll start popping up on your social media now that I've said it. But I have a few pieces from them now, and love the quality, and they are more of an affordable, ethical fashion brand. I also love Everlane. They do really, really good basics. And that's the thing too, with most of the fair trade type ethical fashion brands, you're going to see really classic things, because the idea is that you're going to be able to wear it in a million different ways. You're going to have this shirt for 20 years. You're going to, so you're not going to see a lot of the like trendy patterns and colors and, things like that. That's when you see those things, it's like, that's fast fashion. Like they're putting out a new collection every 2 weeks. But Quince and Everlane and Nisolo are great places to start, and very affordable. Everlane too is very affordable. For something that you're going to wear for years and years and years, right? Like, and that's the point. You don't want something in your closet that you're only going to wear for one day.
If you're looking for something bold and statement making, I just love the patterns that Francis and Benedict come up with. They're just beautiful, and of course small batch, so they're all hand done. Yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you so much, Erin. I appreciate you spending an hour with us tonight.
Thank you guys for having me.
Great weekend on the volleyball court tomorrow.
His son's birthday tomorrow. His golden birthday. 14 on the 14th. I know.
Oh my gosh. Why was he 14?
I know. He was 3 when we met. So
crazy.
It is.
Thank you, Erin. Have a great night.
Thank you guys so much. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. All right. So we have our next speaker already lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce. I love when things line up, and things seem to be going pretty smooth.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So our next guest is Julian Christensen, and I have known her for, oh my goodness, I'm thinking like 20 years. Is that possible? How's that possible since I'm only 30?
Right.
Just kidding. If anybody who doesn't know me is watching, I'm just joking. Okay, so Julian Christensen is an author, psalmist, revivalist, and teacher. She has spent her life serving the body of Christ as a mother to the church. The mission of her apostolic ministry has always been to equip sons and daughters to seek the kingdom of God through worship, prayer, prophecy, and relationship with Holy Spirit.
That's awesome.
Her passion to see trafficked children and adults saved and set free prompted the writing and recording of her song entitled Sarah's Song. She longs to see an awakening in our world. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Julian. To add you, hi. And she's from West Coast time, so we had some back and forth. We're like, okay, what time is it?
But we made it. Here we are.
Yes.
Right time, right date.
Yes.
You're here. We're together. It's awesome. And I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Julian, and we're going to share the video of your song after she's done speaking. So
awesome.
Right.
Welcome, Julian.
Thank you so much. Well, I went ahead and set my timer so that I don't go too long, and we have some time for question and answers at the end. But Dixie, thank you so much. It's just been a joy to know your family, to know your heart for the trafficking ministry, to see it absolutely annihilated in our world, and just all you've done to help the girls and young men. So I just applaud you. I celebrate you. And I am just honored to be here tonight to be able to share a little bit of my story. And my name as she said, is Julaine, and it's like Elaine, so Julaine. And I have been married for a very long time to a super amazing man. I have 3 adult children and I have 11 grandchildren. And I actually have 3 great grandchildren. That's right, 3. Oh my gosh, time is flying by. But I've always had a passion for music. I've had a passion to be able to create. And I wanted to use my gift. So let me give you just a little bit of a background about me before I get to Sarah's song. But I worked for the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. when I was about 26 years old in 1974, 75. And I came to the Lord then. That's where I met Jesus. And then from there, we moved to, my husband was in the military. We moved to Tampa, Florida. I began my first year teaching. So I taught school in Tampa, Florida, Washington, D.C. We went back for our second time, and in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's in Alexandria, Virginia, the Washington, D.C. area that I became a worship leader and really began to embrace the ministry of music. And I knew that it had become such a passion in my heart that it's what I wanted to do the rest of my life, along with teaching. So I became that worship leader. We moved back to Omaha. And while in Omaha, I then became the director of music in our church at Bellevue Christian Center in Omaha, Nebraska. So I spent 30 years from there on the road. I became a traveling evangelist, worship leader, prophetic worship leader. And my passion those 30 years on the road was to really help people embrace intimacy in worship, and just to be able to come close to Jesus and put away, the song 1, song 2, song 3, all the things, the rigidity of all of it, and just really be free to let Jesus just move. And that's where Dixie, you and Nick became so important to me, because we had that same heart in worship. And so for 30 years, starting in 1993, I traveled in full-time ministry. I had a full band that traveled with me, and we traveled across the United States, loving Jesus. And I've been in more than 24 countries, and I've shared the good news, and I've led in worship, and in Cuba 4 times. Have a real spiritual worship son from Cuba. And so just love all of that. And so I came back off the road for a season in 2008, and I began the house of prayer, house of worship called the Omaha Hub. And it actually started in my home. I thought I was done. And this is all leading up to Sarah's song. So bear with me a minute, because there's just this whole progression that we want to get to here. But I had been somewhere, and God had just touched me. And I came back home, and I had some friends, and they wanted to come over to my house. And they said, well, if God has touched you like that, will you share with us? And so I had a few people come over, and I just sat on the piano and I just began to lead in worship. And during that time, then I just got up and laid hands on people. We prayed for one another, and the power and presence of God just came in. It was amazing. And then everybody said, well, can we come back next week? And I said, well, I guess so. And so the next week, I had so many people in my home. They were sitting in the kitchen, in the bedroom, they were outside. The house was packed. And I said, Lord, what do you want me to do with these people? He said, just lead them in worship and just pray. And the power and presence of God came. And someone then offered me a building. And this is where the Omaha Hub, or the Hub, started, the house of worship. And we just began there. And Dixie and Nick had been part of that as well, and their children. And we just had hours and hours of worship. And of course, that was my passion. I wanted to be someplace where we could just worship God as long as we wanted to. That was the thing. I didn't want any interruptions. It's like, let's just go for it and let's just love Jesus. So that's what we did. And it's during that time in 2008 that I read the book, somewhere between 2008 and 2012. So it's right in there somewhere. It's 4 years, but it's in that time period. Someone had given me the book entitled Renting Lacey. And I will never forget this book as long as I live, because it literally had changed my life. I sat down one afternoon. I read the entire book, and it was about a young girl. And it really grabbed me because this girl was actually from Lincoln, Nebraska. And I live in Omaha. And so I was just taken by it. She was a young girl. Her parents had passed away. I don't know, I can't remember all of the particulars of it, but it's just this. Her parents had passed away. She ended up living with her grandmother in Lincoln, I believe it was. And she was around 12, 13 years old during that time. But what really got me is I read the book, and they shared the story of how the perpetrators had come into the high school and the junior high, and they started to watch these young girls, and especially those who were needy. They could tell which girls really had a desperate need for love. Girls who probably didn't have a father, or just like Lacey here, who had no parents and just her grandmother who loved her dearly. But, there was this hole inside of her. There was something missing that was huge in her heart. But that stood out because they're trained to see that in young girls and young boys now. They can tell, and they were drawn to her, and they began to, I would say, go after her. That's not the term I want, but they would start to woo her and become a friend and bring her flowers and do all those things, that wooed her heart. And so Renting Lacey, excuse me, that's my husband's phone there. But Renting Lacey just touched me so much because it's her whole story. The story of how at that point they found her, they took her, they began to woo her so much that she ran off with them. And here's how the story ends, if I've got this totally correct. But the story ends where they found her out in the country someplace, and she was dead, and she was pregnant at 13. Now, please forgive me if I have a few of the details wrong, but I'm going to ask my husband to move a little bit because I got his back in my mirror there. There we go. And so anyway, at that moment, when I saw that and I read that, I hit the table. I fell on the table in my kitchen and dining room area. And I wept and I wept and I wept over this story. I had never heard anything like this in my entire life. And so I'm going to tell you that honestly, within 20 minutes, I wrote Sarah's song. And I have to tell you, this is the truth. I had never written like a real song. I am a psalmist, so I can take words from the Bible and I can sing over you, and I would have a prophetic song, but I'd never written like a real song. But in 20 minutes, I wrote this entire song. I didn't have the melody line, but I had all of the words. And I really didn't know what to do with it, but it was in my hand. And I wept over these words. And I knew then that God was speaking something so significant to me, that he was opening up something, this whole realm of trafficking that I had never known in my safe life. I had never known this before. And so here is the song. I'm like, God, what do I do with this? I know this came from you. And it wasn't long after that that somebody else gave me another book, and it was called The Girl Next Door. And that was written by Teresa Flores. And I actually did contact her and brought her to Omaha after all of this because I was so moved by both of these books. So anyway, here I have this song, and I'm on my way. I go to Michigan, where my grandson, my oldest grandson, is living, and he's quite the little musician. Then he still is. But I said, Zach, I have these words, and I began to share my passion about trafficking and what's happening. And my little granddaughter is sitting there, and she's listening to the whole thing, and she gets this passion, and she writes a paper on it. It stirred her to do so much in high school for trafficking, against it, and to bring awareness. But my grandson read the words, and within moments, he had the melody line. He said, Mimi, I think I have the melody. So we worked through the melody while I was there. We came back to Omaha, and I shared it with my son, who's also a musician. And we got together with Sean Keith, who was a worship leader and is now again in Omaha, and quite a musician and producer. So it happened that my grandson came up with the melody. God gave it to him. I got the words. My son and Sean helped produce it, and Sarah's song was born. And I have to give so much credit to our videographer, who is Mike Mooring, the gal who acted in it. She did just such a fantastic job. And all of the people who were a part of the house of worship then, they had this amazing passion to see it fulfilled. And all these kids who were there, they tried to raise money to help, because we needed a lot of money to produce this and a lot of money to do the video. So they did all of their part. And meanwhile, this passion is just growing. We actually did the video in Omaha, down at the old market. And in this story, at that time, most of the trafficking ministries were overseas. But when God gave this to me, I knew this was, of course, always for overseas, every country facing this. We need the awareness of that. But there was something here about our city and about the cities. And God awakened my heart to the fact that this was happening right across the street, which The Girl Next Door, written by Teresa Flores, that's what her story was. Here is this young girl living in this city. You would never, ever realize that in the middle of the night, she was being trafficked. And all day, during the day, her parents had no idea. And she went to school and nobody knew. But in the night, they would call her on her phone. She had a separate phone, and force her to come out into the street. They used force. They would kill her parents. I mean, just all sorts of horrible things. So I realized that not only was this taking place outside of our country, but this was happening right across the street. This was happening 40 miles down the road from me, that this happened with Renting Lacey. And my heart, it just was overwhelmed with all of this. I just felt like I couldn't do enough, and I didn't know what to do. So we took this song, we went down to the old market in Omaha, and then we put all of this video together, which Dixie's going to show you. So I think what happened was, when The Sound of Freedom came out again, it was like, I'm sitting there and I'm just awakened. I'm going to cry again. I'm just awakened again. And Sarah's song became alive inside of me. And I want you, when you listen to it, to really grasp the words of this song, because I want you to understand, I've never written a song like this. In 20 minutes, those words were on that paper. So I knew that God had a purpose in that. And I've shared it over and over again as I speak in different places and conferences, and I've seen women just run to the aisle. This is me. This is me. This was me. This was my heart. So as we get ready, I want to give you just and read this little story behind Sarah's song and why I chose the name Sarah. It was inspired, again, like I said, by countless stories I've heard or read over the past several years concerning sex trafficking. And the more I researched the issue and the more statistics that I obtained, the greater my passion became. And I wanted to see the world become aware of what was happening right here in the US as well. So as my heart was awakened to the injustice, the name Sarah kept coming to my mind. And Sarah means princess. And in the book of Genesis, in the Bible, it is recorded that Sarah gave birth to Isaac, which means laughter. And I felt that Sarah's name would become a metaphor for all girls who are caught and bound in this atrocity, and that now is the time for them to give birth to laughter. Therefore, as I wept over those caught in trafficking, Sarah's song was birthed. And I have such a heart to see the Sarahs, a metaphor for all trafficked young ladies, a metaphor for all, probably not young men, the name, but for all those caught in trafficking, that metaphor, Sarah, I want her to laugh again. And so would you join us as Dixie puts the song on? And Dixie, as you're getting ready for it, I'd like to read Psalm 96, just part of that. It says, "Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Sing to the Lord. Bless his name and show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the nations." And then Psalm 97, verse 2. "Clouds and darkness are around him, but righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne." And so, Dixie, I'm going to give it to you. We've got about 10 minutes yet, so we could play the song. And then if there are any questions, I am here. Thank you so much.
Saw you on the street and I couldn't understand what made a girl like you give in to this grown man. A shouting woman's body, all made up for the night. Your high-heeled shoes and backpack, oh, your hair was pulled outside. Oh, Sarah, Sarah, this is your song. I sing it to you, it won't be long. We are weeping and wailing for what has been done. Trafficking, the crime unsung. Into the streets you walk, who will buy you tonight? This is how they claimed you, the woman for the night. I know this wasn't your dream, the day you ran away, just for a little freedom, to see the world a different way. Sarah, Sarah, this is your song. I sing it to you, it won't be long. We are weeping and wailing for what has been done. Trafficking, crime unsung. Oh, the crime unsung. Now you are trapped with nowhere to go. Only fading memories from a long time ago. God spoke your name to me, and I heard your cries tonight. He told me your story, and I promise we will fight. Oh, Sarah, Sarah, this is your song. I sing it to you, it won't be long. We are weeping and wailing for what has been done. Trafficking, the crime unsung. The crime unsung. For those caught in the battle, trapped out of sight. No man can hold you, no one can keep you. You're caught in the mercy of God's loving mind. No man can hold you, no one can keep you down. Sarah, yeah, no one can keep you down. Sarah.
I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to share this song, Dixie. It just means the world. I'm just going to cry again. I just feel like, sometimes you just want to give and give it. All I have to give is my voice. All I have is that. And
Yeah.
I like to.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
creativity, your inspiration. And I love that story of how it inspired the whole community to really join hands. And I remember that a team from the hub was part of the prayer and worship during the College World Series. They had a prayer room set up just to combat trafficking during that event. And I know that a team from the hub was a big part of that. And actually, one of my sons played drums for for a while too. So
Tony.
it's really awesome, and showing how you can not just use your creativity, but different artistic avenues to create awareness, to bring hearts into alignment on an issue, on the issue of fighting human trafficking, but also combating it in the spirit realm, and it makes a difference.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, right now we still have prayer and worship watches during the College World Series because there's so much trafficking going on, and it's really vital right now down in the Omaha Old Market that we are doing watches. In fact, I just did the last 2 weeks. I live part-time in Phoenix, so it's hard for me. When I go back, I do it, but I just did 2 weeks in a row of prayer watches, 2 hours each, where we actually worship and pray for those caught in trafficking. And we're actually right across the street from a lot of things that are going on right down in the city. So I love that. Thank you so much. I just, it means so much to be able to share it whenever I do. I was watching the video too, and my grandson and how young he was, and just how, it was just incredible how he's sitting there, and he was just so cute. He's like, oh, Mimi, I've got it. I know it. He picks up his guitar and he starts singing it. And I'm like, what? I thought, God, you are amazing. So
I love it. If there are any questions for Jillian, now is the time. I know there's a little bit of a delay for the streaming, so if anybody has questions, now is the time. I would like to know if you've been inspired in any new directions in fighting human trafficking now.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, getting back to that place, looking for um, places where I can do that kind of worship and I can just sing and prophesy and just the more we come into the presence of the Lord, the more those things are broken off. And we pray specifically for exposure.
Yeah.
That things, yes, that people will be exposed who are undercover doing what they shouldn't be doing. And just, I think it's just caused me, when I saw that movie again, I thought, oh my goodness, I have to get myself back up into that place again and remember why I fought so hard for that song. And it wasn't even, I don't think the song is for everybody, anybody. I've never charged, I just give it away and use it. But I think it was just such my heart at that moment as I literally laid on my dining room table, weeping over a piece of paper, that I come back to that place again and not forget. And I've traveled to so many different countries in Thailand, walking through Thailand and realizing that these things are going on, knowing that you're more aware again, walking through the airports and just getting those antennas up and not forgetting. That's why this movie is just so important. And I just want to say that if anybody, would love to use the song or use it, you have my permission. Just let me know, because I would love to pray with you when you do that. It's just for his glory, and so that Sarah can laugh again. We want her to laugh.
Yeah.
So,
Amen. Yeah, the song is available on iTunes as well.
yeah.
And,
It's actually
I
available.
downloaded it today because I'm like, yeah, I want it on my phone.
Yeah.
Well, it's available under my son's name,
Yes.
actually, under Chad Christensen, rather than, and then it'll show up Sarah's song. But yeah, I'm asking the Lord. I'm in that season again. So, Lord, what does this look like now? This is a new day again.
Yeah.
What do you want to do now?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Julian. I'm so grateful that you could join us tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so honored. I bless you, girls, and I celebrate you in what you're doing, and how wonderful that we can put all of our gifts together and make a difference, one Sarah at a time. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we are wrapping up session 1 of
Can you
the
believe
Creating Confidence Challenge.
We're going to be back tomorrow.
I know. We'll be back in the morning at 10 o'clock for session 2. We have some stuff to share. We have a special presentation from my friend Leah. And we also have session 3 at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So, and a special, oh man, I don't want to give it away, but we do have a special presentation then. And we're going to talk a little bit more about fair trade swaps. And some of it's fun. Some of it is, it's challenging. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else?
No, just I wanted to thank you guys for being here and for praying with us and for participating in these challenges. And we are so honored that we get to see the people that are sharing their lives and their passions, and they're trusting that those things are making a difference. And we hope that that does spark you to create some confidence in yourself and living into that identity as well. So if you guys have creative ways you're thinking of and you want somebody to bounce that off of, definitely reach out to us.
Yeah, drop it in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, we'll see the comments and we will get back to you.
Awesome.
Have a great Friday night.
Bye,
Good night, guys. I hit 3 buttons.
Yeah, all the buttons.